Oh, hello there, gentlemen.
Hello.
Nice.
All right. So we're going to jump right into it tonight. I have a lot of notes to get through. This is the second of my series. And tonight we're going to be talking about choice. And for lack of a better term, the inevitability of choice. So to jump straight, this is not going to be a large data session where I'm just dumping charts and graphs on you. I know I'm famous for that around here, but
Yeah.
sometimes
I actually kind of like it. So,
well, here's the thing though. Charts and graphs only convince people who care about charts and graphs. um, so sometimes we have to do a little bit more of a logic thing. So we're going to do that tonight. We're going to spend some time just working through something that we started to lay down the foundation of this, and in our episode last week on Monday, we will actually at the end of the show tie back to that episode when discussing kind of current events. So I'm going to start with the only thing I'm going to throw up today is 3 definitions, and the definitions that I'm going to throw up are from Nick's favorite dictionary. And the reason I'm using Nick's favorite dictionary is not because they have some special definition, but actually because this dictionary does not have a special definition. If you were to use these same words 200 years ago, everyone would have understood exactly what you meant. And that's actually my point here. These words haven't changed. So the first word is, well, choice. What is choice? Yeah, we'll make it a little bigger here.
oh,
The act of choosing. Oops.
uh-oh.
Yeah. The AI is trying to help me out. Not. So the voluntary act of selecting or separating from 2 or more things, that which is preferred. Okay. Another term, a synonym might be election. That's cool. The power of choosing. That's an interesting definition. Okay. Care in selecting. Judgment or skill in distinguishing. Oh, interesting. And then the rest of these definitions get into some more, like more specific definitions, like elected to office and stuff like that. Okay.
That's a choice. That's a type of choice. Yeah.
It's a type of choice. That's a good way to describe it. So the next word is perspective. And if you were to use the word perspective, a view, of vista, I actually like this. They a glass through which objects are viewed is a perspective. To an interesting point,
like a microscope,
yeah,
or a telescope.
But an interesting point on this is your eyeballs also use a lens, just like a microscope or telescope. So
True.
Everything you see is viewed through a glass or perspective. Okay. And then the final word is observation. We use this word a lot in the Red Pill. We use this word a lot here. We love observation. And it's the act of observing or taking notice, seeing or of fixing in the mind on anything. That's fixing the mind. That's an interesting phrase. Yeah, this dictionary has some really interesting definitions.
So there's no mere blank observation.
Correct, and we're going to get into that tonight. And of course, there's other definitions like adherence to practice, but that's not really what we're interested in tonight. So we'll just keep these definitions in mind because all 3 of these matter to where we're headed tonight. Okay, pull up my notes. So I'm gonna do a little bit of a thought experiment with you guys here. Observation is seeing that an apple exists in my hand. If I were to hold an apple up to the proverbial camera here that I don't have on, and I was to say, do we all agree that this is an apple? You all would say, you would look at it
Sure.
and you would say, yeah, you all would look at it and you would say, that's an apple.
Most of the
For their
time, unless you had some weird specimen.
yeah, pear-shaped apple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and then we might disagree on the basis of our definition of what an apple should look like. But in general, we can observe the various properties of the apple and come to a shared understanding, an agreement that this is in fact an apple. I mean, one of the ways to tell an apple and a pear apart is to cut them open. A pear has different guts than an apple does. So that's observation. And, we're red pill guys here, and we love talking about the observations of the red pill. Okay. And we've actually talked about this before. The red pill is not amoral, but it is possible to make an observation without attaching any the observation itself has no attached morality. And we've talked about this before, and Nick and I
would disagree. But
I know you would, but for the moment, the simple act of seeing something, taking the information into your eyes or your fingers, if you touch or smell, these are observations, and we're not making any moral judgment on the existence of the apple. Is really what I'm trying to get at, right?
Well, you're not strictly speaking upon morality, but there is a morality of observation.
Okay, right, but we all look at the apple, we agree that it's an apple or not, and we can have this is science, but science
Right.
has
There's a right way to do science. That's my point.
well, yes, there is, and that is a key point. Although we made that point in another video, so we're not going to revisit it too hard here tonight.
Right.
Perspective is seeing the apple from different viewpoints at the same time. So, in this example, I hold up the apple to the camera, but I cannot have the exact same view of the apple as the camera does. Okay. You two would necessarily get a different perspective of the apple than I could possibly ever have. And the reason I bring this up is because, particularly on the left, this is kind of their view. This is the starting point for why they think that choice doesn't matter. Choice doesn't matter because you have a different perspective.
Subjectivism.
It absolutely is. But their view is that the perspective drives how you choose to act. Therefore, the choice is not one of morality. Your perspective drives the correct moral choice.
Another way to say this might be my truth, my perspective, your truth, your perspective. So whatever.
So this is
So that's why it's important to see things from multiple viewpoints and to be able to look at things from another person's perspective. So you can basically understand them and agree on what you're talking about, whatever the concept is. And then you can diffuse that my truth, your truth thing.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because that's exactly what science does. A scientist will hypothesize a thing. This is an apple. And then somebody else from a different viewpoint can come in and say, and do their own measurements from their own perspective and say, oh yeah, this really is an apple. Or, sorry, dude, you're actually talking about a pear here.
The story of the blind men and the elephant comes to mind. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yes, but go ahead.
How do you know it's an elephant, though? I'm sorry.
Okay, this is a matter of perspective, and I guess limited. Well, they can't see, obviously, and so they can't see what they're talking about. So they're just basing it on one sense, and so their perspective is limited. The parable of the blind men and an elephant is a story of a group of blind men who have never come across an elephant before, who learn and imagine what an elephant is by touching it. Each blind man feels a different part of the animal's body, but only one part, such as the side or the tusk. Then they then describe the animal based on their limited experience, and their descriptions of the elephant are different from each other. In some versions, they come to suspect that the other person is dishonest and they come to blows. Okay, does that kind of describe how different perspectives, when people think
No,
their
I
perspective
call
is the
bullshit.
truth?
Well, no, we're
I call
I get
Bullshit
on the
on
whole
what?
elephant, the whole elephant paradigm. Somebody knows it's a fucking elephant. That's why you're telling the story. Who the fuck knows it's the elephant? Who gets to tell the
Oh,
story?
it's the person telling the story
Oh,
that knows.
you don't know shit, right?
it was the blind man who said, "I see," as he picked up his hammer and saw.
Yeah, that's some Hinduistic bullshit. Story.
Well,
They're trying to
there is no end of Eastern influence in modern day thought. Although
But you can say the feminists have a different perspective, a different truth. And are people coming to blows? I actually heard a story today of in restaurants of all
yes,
places. Uh, Usually there's male cooks and a lot of female wait staff. And the women are in there and they want to know, who did the men vote for? And if a man says he votes for Trump, it's on. And if a man is trying to say, well, my business, I don't want to say that. Well, then he's still evil because he didn't stand up for the women. And they are coming to blows, or close to it. And it's all a matter of perspective in belief based on differing points of view.
okay, and I like this because there's so much of our life that is trying to not just understand somebody else's perspective, but really fighting for, or with this concept of perspective. The human mind really struggles to see that there is that there is an objective truth and that the other person can't see it the same way that they do. The apple exists, and Nick and Steve will never experience the apple as I do or as each other do. They can cut it
It
open.
might be true. Somebody might be living in Antarctica or the Arctic and never have an apple in their life.
Well, here's another thing. Altitude changes your ability to taste. It's
Oh,
if you didn't so here's if you were to taste airline food on the ground, you would spit it out. This is actually a well-known discovered thing in science. There was a cooking show that I watched like 12 years ago now, where it was those competition shows where the chefs have to, you know, create the best dish. But the deal was they had to create the best dish for an airliner, and they brought in a chef
oh.
from Lufthansa, and he said, "Look, you cannot." He told all the chefs, "Look, you cannot over-season this. You will not put in enough." And they're sitting there dumping salt in and spices in, and he's going more. None of them made a dish that was spicy enough. He had calibrated his palate to be able to taste what it needed to be like at sea level to taste proper at 10,000 feet. So,
Well,
yeah, your environment can change your perceptions, and this is a biological fact. Some people have in their tongue, they have a higher affinity for salt or sugar. Okay, so if you have a lower affinity for sugar than I do, that apple is actually going to taste different to you than it does to me. So your experience of the apple is different than mine. However, I'm going to continue on with my example here. Okay, Nick, I offer you an apple to eat.
I know what
Nick,
the apple is.
well, you know what the apple is, but I'm making a choice to offer you the apple, And you can now make a choice. Well, I don't really feel like an apple, or hey, an apple sounds good. I'll eat one. I'll eat your apple. Okay. Right. So
Mhm.
we have the interesting thing about this is we have now moved from beyond understanding and trying to describe an apple to making a choice about what to do with this apple. It was my choice to offer you the apple, and it is your choice to take the apple. But there's another choice. Steve, I want to eat my apple, but you think my apple looks tasty. You want the apple for yourself.
Oh, I can choose to threaten you. Give me that apple, or I'm going to hit you over the head with a hammer.
Yes. And I can choose to say, you know what? I don't want to get hit with a hammer. Here's the apple. Go ahead, take it. But what might that do to my thinking about interacting with Steve in the future? Huh.
You might not want to. You might not have to. You can just take out your gun and say, that's not happening. Bang. Okay, now your problem's over.
Right. So for every choice we make, there is a consequence. And you
Yeah.
cannot know what with 100% certainty, even using logic, what those consequences will be. However,
Oh, same thing with RP and women, right? But you can postulate. You can.
well, the human brain can do a little thing called heuristics. The human brain is an
What's a
excellent
heuristic?
A heuristic is recognizing a pattern and
There you
then
go.
choosing a response, and then making a choice, then seeing what the response is and seeing which response gets you or is most likely to get you the outcome you're looking for. So, but the point of this Apple example is to demonstrate that, and I mean, Steve, it's great that you took it all the way to kinetic violence. I love it, because we went from
Stephen Martell.
yeah, I mean,
Steve Martell.
we went from Steve just saw his apple to me literally ending a dude's life over an apple. Now, I would never actually do that to Steve or anyone else, particularly over an apple. But the point is that this is a trivial choice. This apple, okay, to offer it, or to Steve, it could appear that this is a trivial choice. It's an apple. Who fucking cares, right? Why should I care so much? Go ahead, Steve.
Because it's mine.
The apple is just a symbol. We can replace the apple with anything.
Yes.
Gold.
We could replace the apple fruit with the apple of your eye, your wife.
Oh.
Okay. Then would you consider shooting me?
Yeah, you'd be leaving it in a body bag pretty quick. And
See? Okay, so that we're just talking. I mean, the apple is just a metaphor for an object which we all can agree on. Replace that object with anything. The choices, we still all have choices. So we're talking about philosophy here. So it changes based on what the object is. What the observation, what object are you observing? And what's your perspective? And once those are agreed upon, every one of us has a choice.
Okay. But Steve, I don't want to make a choice. I'm not going to make any choices in life.
Well, you took the choice to just sit there and wither away.
Oh, you mean not choosing is a choice too?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
not choosing means if you have all the apples and I'm hungry and you're not giving me an apple, okay, you've now put me in a bind where If I want it, you're not going to give it to me or offer it to me. I'm just going to have to come and take it. So your
Oh.
choice of not choosing affects what my choices are, which essentially puts you in a different. You have to understand the consequences of your choice.
Oh, so are we talking about choice today, or are we actually really talking about consequence today? Hmm. Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, Steve. Particularly this idea that by not making a choice, you. This is a good comment. This just came in. This is a great way to describe what Steve is talking about. You're an accessory to the choice. And that really is what's going on here. By not making a choice, I'm forcing somebody else to make a choice. Right? Because
Sure.
now Steve has to choose, well, am I going to take this apple or not? He's, the person, he's neither offering it to me nor he's saying, I can't have it. It's just an apple sitting there. Every one of these choices also has consequence. Consequence is an inescapable reality of life. And so we humans tend to develop heuristics because our brains are pretty powerful pattern matching engines. And we develop heuristics to decide, well, what's the choice that's that have the least bad consequences for me? In many cases, the choice will be to not take the apple. And we see this in the fact that most people don't steal. But we also see that there is a percentage of the population that does. And here's another consequence of not choosing, Steve. The more people that I see around me who choose to make the choice to steal my apple and get away with it, the more likely I am going to say, you know what? They're getting away with it. I can get away with it too.
True.
So I would postulate that not making a choice is always making a choice for increasing chaos. Do you, I mean,
Sure.
Mm.
Because when you don't make a choice, now you're forcing a choice on another person, which adds a greater element of random in there. Because you
and
can't really predict what another person's choice is going to be with certainty. Now, you can use heuristics. Another word for that is generalizations.
yes,
Okay, so I can drive my car to a small town in the middle of, empty North Dakota, Podunk, North Dakota. I can park my car on the street and leave the keys in it. And okay, chances are the car's still going to be there.
Well,
If
it depends if there's any other a certain population nearby
okay,
that.
well, you know what? Depends
I'm not going to
on
try not to bring up.
it
So I looked
depends
up there
on
too. I know what I'm talking about.
okay, or I could go to a big city and do that.
Like
Or I can
that.
go to different ethnic neighborhoods where people are not so trusting, not a small neighborhood where everybody knows each other. It's not a high trust environment. I can't make the same choice there. Or the choice I make, even if it's the same choice, has higher consequences. Therefore, because consequences are higher for making that same choice, I'm not going to make that choice. So you're making judgments based on, uh, generalizations and heuristics.
or if you do make that same choice, there's a higher chance that someone else is going to make a choice that's negative to you. And
Right.
that's really what we're trying to get at here. A vote for no choice. I always do things the same way regardless, right? Which is really what you're kind of doing here. You're ignoring your brain's ability to create these heuristics, and you're saying, nope, I have to always do it this way. Okay. that rigid way of thinking is actually going to cause more trouble for you and for the rest of the world. Because people are going to say, oh, this idiot, he left his keys in the car and I can just steal it. And there's a higher chance that they will do it. Okay. No choice. But Steve, you brought up something fascinating. You brought up the word random. Now, one of the things that I've done in my software career is cryptography. And the concept of randomness is actually key to cryptography. It's the core component. But we don't actually use the word random. We use a different word, entropy. In physics, entropy is literally pure chaos. But the most pure entropy is the most statistically random data out there. And so all of cryptography is trying to make things that are not random look random. That's the whole field in a nutshell. And how effectively and efficiently you can make it look like pure entropy. And we actually use entropy that's the heat off of your CPUs. By the way, heat in physics is pure entropy. Heat. So we use the heat off of the CPU in your computer to create randomness, to create entropy. Randomness is always and everywhere the decay of something. That's a fun little tangent I didn't expect to go down. But Steve, you actually hit on a key point there. The unwillingness to make a choice is the explicit intent to invite entropy and chaos into the world, because you are now you are now giving the choice to somebody else. But here's the thing. We all humans know that there are some choices that have better outcomes than other choices.
What makes it better?
Well, okay. For example, we know that stealing food from another tribe, let's say this is actually an example I saw on Twitter. Let's say you're a nomadic tribe and you wander upon a field full of domesticated cows. And you go, aha,
Okay.
food. I'm going to take the food. And you kill it. And you eat it.
Mhm.
And then the farmer comes out and shoots you. You, the nomad tribe, don't understand why the farmer is responding this way. Why is he killing us? Why is he? Okay.
Okay. Everybody has a general sense of moral principles. It may be,
Aha.
everybody tries to evade that. It can be, you can degenerate so far and be given over to a debased mind, but it's nonetheless not totally erased.
Well, here I'm actually going to get into that. We call these heuristics. For example, is why do we all think that stealing is bad? Why does everyone think that theft is bad and bad for society?
Because they're made in the image of God.
Well, that's
because it creates chaos and it creates loss. And I
The
work
universe
for
doesn't care.
something. I own it. It's my property. I take care of it. And then when someone steals it, it's essentially stealing my labor. Now I have to work for it again, and it's adding a disorder. It's adding chaos. Everybody gets to keep their own property. We have order.
okay. Steve, I'll continue on that. What is the purpose of civilization?
I'm playing devil over here. Sorry.
Oh, yes, you are. You're having fun with this. Somebody read
To
his notes.
maintain order.
Yes. So humanity has spent, go back to the beginning of the Bible. Okay, that's what, 5,000 years or so? 6,000, depending on how you date it, roughly. Okay. Humanity has spent 6,000 years attempting to bring order to the chaos that we live in. Why? because the human mind inherently recognizes that order is superior to chaos. Thousands and thousands of years of recorded history, all of which humans are trying to improve the order in their lives.
Men want stability because stability means survival. If things are stable, I can earn and I can provide for my family. So, yes, I want stability. That's order.
Okay. I love this. I love this word stability because it actually, and this is just a quick note on the election and birth rates. We'll get more into this later. Stability is more important than economics. Economic progress throughout history has been a consequence, a result of stability. Economic progress slows when there is instability. Economics does not solve your problems. Stability solves problems. And going back to what Steve said, what are men?
Order makers,
Problem solvers.
because we're made after the one who ordered everything.
Now,
There you
now
go.
to diffuse this stability, something I've been thinking about today. And this, okay, let's leave this to another day. But man desires stability. But stability is boring. They bring stability to women. That's boring. Women want security. It's a different concept. You can still be secure and have some excitement, but men don't really want excitement. They just want stability. I can relax as I look around. Yeah, the world is ordered. Not a lot of emotional turmoil. Yeah, this is good. Stability. I don't think women look at it that way. But, if we go down that, we'll be chasing rabbits.
Yeah, that'll be it for the stream. Well, so there's okay, so observation and morality or perspective or all of these things are prerequisite to choice. See, if we have heuristics, do you know what another term for a morality might be?
Ethics.
Morality is a set of heuristics that have been proven over time to achieve the desired outcome.
Are you talking about utilitarianism?
Kind of, but in this particular case, what I'm really trying to get at is this idea that I'm not trying to say that morality is inherently just human heuristics, but it seems odd to me that so much of what morality said just happens to match things that have been proven to work in the past to increase stability.
Yeah, heuristics would support that, but morality does include some other aspects, which
It does.
I think, what Nick is alluding to.
Yes, and but for just for the purpose of explaining here, if all choice requires heuristics, then all choice is going to have some form of basic morality attached to it. To make a choice, I must have a heuristic about what the consequences of that choice will be, because the very foundation of the universe we live in is cause and effect. So
Well, there's an inseparable relation with metaphysics, ethics, and epistemology. So knowledge, morality, or the beingness of the universe.
exactly that's what I'm trying to that's what I'm trying to get at. That we cannot escape this idea that because we do something, that there is an effect of that thing. It's fundamental to how the universe is ordered. It's inescapable. And so we use heuristics or morality. You can use whichever language makes you feel more comfortable out there, YouTube viewers, to determine which action is going to get us what we seek. And there are actors out there who actually do seek to increase chaos. And they use heuristics to achieve that goal, just like, somebody who is trying to build a civilization uses their heuristics to achieve more order. There is such thing as bad morality. There's such thing
Do
as
I
a
want to
bad.
go there today, or are we going to leave that off for another day?
I think we're going to leave that off for another day.
Okay.
But you can have a flawed moral framework. I don't know, Nick, am I wrong on that or no?
Yeah. I mean, atheism itself is a flawed moral framework. They still have morals, they still act upon morals, but they have no basis for them, even though they still, for some reason, adhere to them, because the universe has no feelings, the universe doesn't care. There are no ultimate consequences, it just is.
Right. So you can have heuristics that achieve outcomes that the majority don't agree with. You can have that moral framework that can all be true, but what you cannot have is no morality. That is not a thing that humans can do. And
Let me test that.
Okay.
I'm going to start out with the 4 words that when any man hears, he should prepare himself. It goes like this. Yeah, but what if? What if I'm a special snowflake? And my perspective is completely different. And you can't know me. You can't know my perspective. And my truth and my thing is so unique that heuristics, you can't use any generalizations or averages of whatever. That's all out. We have to decide everything based on my rationalizations,
Do you objectively believe
absurd beliefs. Some people do.
So yes, obviously he's playing the
So-
devil's advocate
so-
here.
that? I know.
Yeah. So some people just say there is no, you cannot apply heuristics to me.
So I was chatting with a philosopher friend last night, and you know what he told me to say to these people?
What?
I can't have a conversation with you because we can't agree on anything. Goodbye. The problem is you are so far away that there is no conversation to be have. They don't have a rooting in any sort of shared truth. If there's no shared
Is this
truth,
like post-structuralism?
well, oh God, you brought up that S word. We're going to get into that a lot next week.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's also deciding based on feelings rather than facts. The observations, what's actually there, doesn't matter. What I feel is
Correct.
there. And so now you have no common understanding what the object is. You can't even have a good conversation. So say again what your friend's advice to you was?
To say, he's a polite guy, so he would politely say, look, I can't have a conversation with you because we don't agree on what words mean. So I'm out. Bye.
And
Yep.
this situation comes up quite frequently.
We
When you're
teach this
just
crap in
at
English
odds.
in college. It's crazy. Gosh.
Well, if you cannot agree on the shared truth, on the observation, there is no shared. There's no. They can literally say that the word gloop means love, and then demand that you accept this.
I have to tell you something. I was taking an English class, right? They're supposed to teach me the English language, right? And then they had this shit philosophy that come up, basically saying this, and I'm like, then what the fuck is the point of me even being here if we can't even agree on what language is?
Right. I'm going to pull up a comment here from Chief of Sinners. Special Snowflake is like the Gary Larson cartoon, the penguin rising up amongst the other penguins singing, "Me, I've got to be me." Yeah, it's it's solipsism, it's sophistry. Actually, I would use the word sophistry because in sophistry, it doesn't it the shared truth never mattered. It was only who could argue their point more forcefully and win. And you see that with the left and Steve's example all the time. Well, I'm so special that you can't possibly apply your heuristics and generalizations to me. So, okay, you that's sophistry. You're just trying you're setting the preconditions for an argument that I cannot possibly win against you because the words and the you have denied the shared reality that we all inhabit. So there's no conversation to be had with you.
There's another thing that coming clear. A friend I have, we always get into arguments. Yeah, we see things from a different political standpoint, but then again, sometimes he has clarity of thought, and we're not so far apart. But whatever we discuss, I say something, he looks for ways to disagree with it and say, "You're wrong here." And then we go off hunting rabbits, chasing rabbits on that. Another way of doing it is he's got a concept, I got a concept or belief. We can look for similarities and then see how close we are to each other instead of focusing on how far apart we are. Some people tend to focus on how far apart you are and nitpick at details rather than seeking a common understanding of the issue and then where your perspectives differ.
That's a good way to make a good friend into an enemy. You guys
Yeah,
there? Can you hear
yeah,
me?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There might be a little bit of
No,
delay between the three of us today.
I get details are important, and that's a point for theologians and philosophers to go over. But like, look, if someone's basically saying the same crap you are, and you're on the same side,
Yeah.
Even, even if they're saying something distinctly different than what you're doing, you're not going to make any headway by debating them and going on about that. A better tactic is to seek commonalities in maybe 20% of what they said.
Oh yeah.
And then
You could
you can sneak another 10% of your belief in there and they might go, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, you've made progress. You're probably never going to see eye to eye. You're not going to see things the same way. But it didn't come to blows because each one of us has a choice when we're discussing something with some object with somebody else who has a different perspective. First, try and define the object and find similarities in our perspective views of that object. And you won't come to blows over that.
well, and here's the other thing, and I don't know if we've talked too much about this, but I personally am a huge proponent of placing influence over power. And that's kind of what Steve is talking about here. Because if I come to you and I agree on you 20% and I'm not antagonistic to everything you say, I might then be able to later influence you by introducing an idea you hadn't considered or an argument you hadn't considered and saying, "Well, have you considered this?" And I can influence you and I can maybe change your views. I'm not going to command you to be completely what I want you to be, but I pull you around a little bit and say, "Well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?" It doesn't have the emotional kick of being able to tell somebody what to do and watching them do it. I grant that. But I don't know if you guys remember the movie Inception. But the,
Okay.
Oh,
the idea of the movie is that it is when you tell somebody an idea, it's not really their idea, it's your idea. When somebody comes up with the idea on their own, they really they believe it and they internalize. And the movie's about trying to convince somebody that it really was their idea, and how do you do that? But the observation of the movie that you tend to believe your own ideas more than you believe another person's ideas, I think is actually fairly on point. It actually gets to the extreme example is actually what Steve used earlier, about the such special snowflake that, only their views mattered is just an extreme version of that.
yeah.
So, and the other thing too is you'll often see, and even in our space, you'll see this, but my biology says that I have to do this. Mm,
You're also assuming a certain metaphysic.
Well, yes, you are.
You're assuming deterministic materialism.
Well, you know what you're also assuming? That you've been lobotomized.
And you have no
The hu-
choice. Yeah.
Exactly, that you have no choice. That you are literally physically missing a piece of your brain. In this case, the neocortex. The front part of your brain that sits over your eyes is where logic and ration and reason happen. And logic and rationality and reason allows you to override your baser biological instincts. Because I can say, well, I want that apple because that apple tastes good and I'm hungry. And then your neocortex interrupts and says, yeah, but you might get shot for it. To go back to Steve's
Yeah, very
Steve's example.
true. But when you get highly emotional, overrides your neocortex, and you're not using logic. In a couple examples come to mind. When a woman decides she's angry with you, no amount of logic is going to, if she's highly emotional and upset, logic is not going to have any impact. Okay, that's using a woman. Now it happens to men too. If, okay, in my previous example, you are, if someone else presents an idea and you attack that idea, they get defensive. And now your attacks, whatever facts you use to prove them wrong, now they're emotional, they're angry. They will not receive or even consider your facts. They're not using logic or their neocortex. So you gotta reduce the emotion in order for that to work.
Well, and to that point, the neocortex is the weakest function of your brain. In part because it's also the most complex. Thinking is hard. Thinking logically is even harder. It's very easy to just react to stimuli. It's built into your nervous system. We have terms like muscle memory. Why? Because eventually your muscles get so used to doing something that they just get good at it, that they just react that way. Your nervous system has a built-in reaction function to hot objects. Drop it, right? We don't have to go all the way to your neocortex to say, it's hot, I need to drop it.
It takes time to think.
Yes.
More time than you have. And we all have that experience. Some event happened, something happened, interaction. And about 6 hours later, you go, oh, I should have said that.
Yep.
Okay,
I know what you mean.
that's the thinking. And the thinking, you can't think fast enough in the moment. Now, yes, you can develop those skills through training and discipline to discipline your mind to go to that logic, to think that way. But that's
Okay, guys.
training. Doesn't always happen that way.
Are laws of logic universal?
I would say no.
I would say yes.
Yes, they have to be.
Well, okay. I was thinking about something else. Okay, you're going to different. Yes. Okay.
So, are they material or immaterial?
Immaterial.
Immaterial. I would say.
But we're talking about the brain.
Logic exists even without the brain.
Right. Yes.
Oh. So the pure naturalist can explain immaterial, universal, objective laws of logic.
They do try though.
Okay.
It's funny.
But
It's
they
fun to
can't.
watch them. It's fun to watch.
I'm referring back to one of my favorite guys I used to listen to years ago. So Greg Bonson. Yeah. Okay. He used that argument a lot. So
Yeah. So I with my thing on logic, I thought we were going down in the direction of emotionalism, but I get yes. The actual rules and laws of logic are for lack of I like the term immutable. They cannot be changed.
yes. And it's interesting that our brains are designed to use those laws of logic. Huh.
So you mean both the immaterial and the material both function under the
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
wow! Oh, what did we just do?
Interesting, isn't that?
What did we just do there?
I got another thing to relate. Playing chess with a pigeon represents the metaphorical scenario. Where I said it. I have to go back. I clicked on the page. I'll have to go. That illustrates the okay. I'll start over. Playing chess with a pigeon is a metaphorical scenario that illustrates the futility of engaging in a rational debate with someone who does not adhere to the rules of logic or reason.
Yes.
Okay. The phrase is playing chess with a pigeon. What is it? You always lose because the pigeon just struts around the board and shits wherever he wants.
Yes.
Basically, not using any logic. Okay, that represents trying to discuss something with a person with no logic or reason. Basically, their perspective is a snowflake perspective that you can't know, and they won't let you know. It's based on feelings, not facts or observation. And it could be just a narrative. It could be a fiction.
And likely is. Because if the
what's gaslighting?
That's a fiction that is
gaslighting.
Specific.
That's apple. No, that's not an apple. That's an orange.
Right. It's creating a fiction with the purpose of, in this particular, with the purpose of manipulating a person into believing that the observational truth is not actually true. That's what gaslighting is.
Right. But does that change the truth? No, it doesn't. It can make
the truth is immutable
of what you're observing, question your perspective, but it doesn't actually change what's true.
Right. The truth is immutable. The rules of logic are immutable, and you can use the rules of logic to override your emotions, and you should. But that's hard. It's the hardest thing that humans do. It requires the most energy in your brain to do. And, Steve, you were talking about 6 hours later coming up with the response to the thing that was said in conversation.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. I have done that more times in life than I care to admit. But here's the thing. That skill does not start until you hit an IQ of 120. People below an IQ of 120 don't do that.
Okay. I didn't
So,
know.
yeah, there's been some wild research done in this about inner monologues and stuff. Anyway, I don't want to derail us too far, but kind of the point of this so far is to say that every choice you make has an impact on yourself, on somebody else, and in the future. And we use these heuristic frameworks or morality frameworks to determine the potential effect of the choice that we're making. So, okay.
Yeah, can I say it a little differently? I mean, we're getting kind of in deep and we're tangling with topics here. Not everybody has a capability of
I'm going to
tracking
pull us
us
out in a second.
or desire. And let's just go with desire. Okay, great. That's fine. This is why we have shortcuts.
Yes.
They're called stereotypes, generalizations.
Yes.
So you don't have to track all this. It's nice to know that it exists. Somebody out there is talking about it. But this conversation today at a deeper level just proves the validity of generalizations and stereotypes. It allows you to make those accurate judgments that are generally moral because it goes on heuristics, and therefore you don't have to do all the thinking in the moment because that's a lot of work. I'll just use this shortcut and use a stereotype or generalization. And then all I got to do is test this generalization or stereotype apply in this situation? Maybe not. Maybe it does. How about if I go with it and then I just kind of observe to see if I have to modify it? But I already have the answer without spending a lot of time thinking.
I'm going to pull up a comment here because it's a good, this one. So
yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Okay.
Okay. You know where I'm going with this, but this is my wife. So I have to, I can speak to this one and she'll listen. The answer is no. Those who can think rationally rely on generalizations even more.
Yes.
So the only way to think clearly, believe it or not, and to think at speed is to use heuristics and generalizations. In fact, that is the one thing that the intelligent have over the normies out there, is they can more accurately and quickly apply a generalization to a situation to achieve a result.
So like when I'm interpreting somebody's thoughts, so I'm engaging somebody's thought, I have all these generalizations where I categorize and dissect the thought that's being promoted.
Yes. And part of the reason that we're spending so much time on this is because next week we're going to say, okay, we have laid out the logical framework and explained ourselves so that when we start using the generalizations that we're going to be using next week, that you guys and we can point back to this week and say, no, we actually did explain ourselves and why we're saying the things we're saying in detail. If you care, go watch this episode. If you don't care, okay, cool.
Interesting thing. We kind of consider ourselves red pill guys, but we talk about a lot of subjects.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can hear him, so that must be you, Nick.
Maybe my sound's going out. Must be me. Okay.
Okay, so we talk about a lot of things. Somehow this is kind of all related to truth and the red pill. And one of the criticisms of the red pill is, those guys never develop anything new. They're just rehashing the same old things over and over, and
heard that a lot.
Hating and blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. We are trying to use some of those truths, call them truths, generalizations, if you want, of the red pill, and then actually go a little bit deeper and say, how does it relate over here? How are some of these things derived? What's another way of thinking about this? What's the philosophy behind this? What's the theology behind this? What's the logic and reason? Okay, so yeah, our stream is not for everybody, but I think it's a good thing to talk about these things. And yeah, we are going someplace with this. And if you go back to our library of all our different episodes, there are thoughts that are weaved through here. And somehow it kind of builds, and then we circle back and we touch on a subject. We don't typically go in eh, in depth as much as we did in the past, but we will touch on it. So, yeah, okay, red pill is not um it's not dead.
No.
It's and it's not I don't know. And I can't come up with the right word.
Well,
Stagnant?
it's not actually. What I would say is red pill is changing. Actually, it's changing a lot, and it needs to change. And that is
Sure.
what we're going to get into next week. But we have to build this foundation before we can get into it next week. Because next week we're going to deal a lot with the philosophy of the red pill. Or should I say
So
one of the philosophies of the red pill, which is I'm giving a lot away.
Plutarch,
Yes.
this is your stream. The one next week is going to be your stream.
Yeah, I know.
So you said this is laying the groundwork. So can you summarize the key points that you want people to understand? Because we've kind of been all over the map. Can you summarize what you want them to remember for next week?
Sure. I want you to remember, if nothing else, all choice has consequence, and all humans use a heuristic moral framework to decide whether or not to accept the consequences of that choice. This is an immutable law of human nature, of human wiring, however you want to think about it. We have to do this. Now, I do have some examples here of, I do want to go, there's some stuff I want to go into. This is me moving more into like the explanatory phase of the discussion. So we are going to leave behind the deep philosophy for a little bit for the next half hour or so. But one of the things you'll hear frequently, particularly out of the red pill space, is that the red pill is amoral. How many times have we heard Rollo say that?
Didn't we do something? Did we do an episode on that?
We did. And I do believe that was a Nick special where he actually, Nick, you came out and said what?
No, it's actually good.
It's a moral
good. The red
good.
pill is good. It's a moral good.
Now,
doesn't mean all the prescriptions are no, but
Nick, you got there by using a logic framework similar to this.
Yes.
And basically, here's how I remember that. Pursuit of truth is a moral good. We all want the truth. And as Christians, the ultimate truth is God, Jesus. So, and Jesus is the Logos, which involves logic is a part concept, logic, reason, order, things like that. So whenever you're pursuing a greater understanding of something, it's morally good. Red pill is about understanding intersexual dynamics in women. If you're pursuing that understanding, you are seeking a moral good. Is that how you would say it, Nick?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's truth out there. God is truth, and you're collecting truth. You're doing what he designed you to do to understand and interact with the world. That's good. And that's also good for your marriage. So if you don't know how to understand women and how they interact, you might have trouble in your marriage. So it's actually a moral good for your marriage as well. But the very fact of truth Truth is not moral. Is not amoral. There's
But
no
what
such
if I
thing as
don't like
amoral
the
truth.
behavior of women, for instance, and I want it to be different? And you're telling me some things that I don't like that truth. Is it still moral
Yeah.
for others to seek the truth?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
kind of hiding your head in the sand and saying, "Oh, I don't want to believe that because it
Oh, didn't
makes
we
me
do another one called the
uncomfortable"?
descriptors are the problem? Didn't you do one called the descriptors are the
yes,
problem?
we did.
Oh,
See what
we
I
have
said? We always come back. It comes around, and we talked about that.
yeah. Now we're and we always take a different tack with than we did with our old episodes. But here's an example of I'm going to make an assertion, then I'm going to give an example. Declaring something amoral is an attempt to argue that because the observations and perspectives are amoral, therefore the choice has no consequence, no moral consequence, no physical. They would agree that it has
teleology.
physical. Yeah, they would agree that it has physical consequence. Even the naturalists would agree with that, but they would say that it has no moral consequence. And so you see an example, and you see this on the left all the time. It's okay to be a whore, but then they have to add this: there will still be good men waiting for you when you're done. Where does that good come from? Comes from the idea. It comes from the hope that they can deny the immorality of the choice to be a whore, and that there will still be a morally good, a man of good moral character waiting for them when they're done.
There's one other aspect of this, directly related to this case. They know what they're doing, the whoring around, is immoral because
Hmm?
they will lie about it later
Mm-hmm. Yes.
in order to protect their reputation. Oh, you see, I wasn't that bad. No, I didn't do all that stuff. What you don't know, you can't accuse me of. And then you can't look down on me for things you don't know that I did. So if you really thought it was amoral, had no consequences, then why are you trying to hide it now?
Yeah. Interesting how that works. But let's see if I can turn this around. Let's see what you guys think of this. It's okay to fuck as many women as you want. Science will keep you from having babies and STDs. Is there a moral consequence of having babies?
Yes.
You brought a whole nother life into this world. I'd say that's a pretty big fucking moral consequence. Is there a moral consequence to getting STDs? Hell yes.
Yes.
You can spread them to somebody else, even unknowingly.
And we've talked at length about how increase in partner count reduces a woman's ability to pair bond.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much accepted in the red pill. Are we supposed to believe that promiscuity or high partner count in men has no effect on his brain or his ability to love one woman or his future, even physical consequences aside? Are we to assume it has no impact on him? That's hard for me to believe.
That's bullshit.
I think the more cogent of the red pill creators would agree that it does have a consequence, that it does have consequences for them, but that they're different. And then you get into
I
the
would agree
argument.
with that.
But now you're just
Yeah.
arguing about what the difference is, not about the
Not whether they exist.
yes. So again,
Well, consequences may be similar, they may be different. But I will say the consequences for men are experienced differently than the consequences for women.
okay. But we have not gotten away from the concept of a consequence. Therefore, we have not gotten away from the idea that you need some sort of moral or heuristic or both framework to decide whether or not you want to take those consequences on. Okay. But this leaves,
Choices and morality are interlinked.
they're inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. And that's one of the key points that I'm trying to make tonight is that if it does not matter what choice you make, there will be consequences. So therefore, you have to decide what is a good choice versus what is a bad choice. You can say, oh, well, but this is a good choice for me. Well, we're going to get into that a lot more next week. But for now, you guys probably remember we've been talking about the birth rate a lot. And the birth rate is a direct result of thinking short term. Well, particularly amongst women. Well, I'm just going to have as much fun as I want, and birth control means that I don't have to have the consequences of having a baby. And then later, at this unspecified later, I'm going to have kids. And then they find out, because and this is pure red pill here, guys. Later, they find out that, oh, the guys don't want them anymore and they can't have kids.
But they also
Even
call that
before
fuck
that-
around and find out.
Yeah, yes.
Even before that, everybody knows a woman is most fertile in her early 20s.
Science knows that, yes.
But somehow, a common belief is a woman's early 20s is best used to further her education instead of bearing children. And it's actually, children is not, women, their purpose is to give birth and raise children. Their whole bodies are designed that way. But no, that's not really what they should be doing. They should be going to get their education for a career and whatnot.
Last I checked,
And
you
they
can
need to
still
do
learn
it
at
at the
35.
same time that they're at the most fertile because, oh no, you're not ready for marriage. It's time for fun and experiences. Okay, well, I think there is it's almost like propaganda that promotes this concept.
Yes.
I don't know if it's willful, but or who's behind it. But it is a theme that's promoted, and that way it kind of is propaganda.
Well, there's a comment here. I'll throw it up quick. Short-term benefit is not a long-term benefit. Not only is that true, if you take a short-term benefit, the consequence is you cannot take the long-term benefit. You can have one or the other. You cannot have both. I mean, people will say, oh, and they'll give some example of where they do exactly that. And then I'll ask them, so what did you give up to get both? And the answer is they gave something up. Okay. So we're drawing kind of a simple straight line argument here, but it is a multivariate problem. And we actually see this with what we were talking about last week. Boomers and Xers spent their entire lives doing one of two things: destroying the system so that they could rebuild it better, mostly the boomers, or the Xers observed that the boomers failed to rebuild it. They did succeed in destroying it, and that there's no hope of rebuilding it, so why should they bother? So the decisions of an entire generation have rung out for 65 to for 60 years now. Nick, I do believe there's a Bible passage somewhere about the sins of the father will be visited on the next 4 generations.
Yeah. Oh, it's in the Ten Commandments. I'll pull it up here. Yep. It's the one on idolatry. Okay. That's the second commandment, although for Roman Catholics is part of the first commandment. So thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments.
Well,
That's
it,
part
it's
of
in
don't make any graven image.
it's interesting that it's third and fourth generation, because we were talking about the generational cycle, and it's a 4-generation cycle. Fascinating. Okay. I'm not going to dwell on
You
that
know,
too long.
I want to make a point.
Go ahead.
You can't take the short-term benefit and still have the long-term benefit. There's a common phrase that basically captures that. People forgot what it means. You can't have your cake and eat it too.
I was thinking about that last night.
Nobody knows what that means. So my ex-wife, second ex-wife, rephrased it. That bugged her. You can't eat your cake and have it too. Once you eat your cake, it's no longer here, so you don't have it anymore.
Yep.
So you can't eat it today, short-term benefit, and still have it tomorrow.
That was an actually example that came up when I was talking with my philosopher friend last night, as one of the problems with this kind of thinking. And now you can see that throughout an entire generation, it's why I put the generations conversation first, is you had a generation that spent their entire lives destroying the system with the idea that they could rebuild it and perfect the human mind. They can't. And the Xers watched that happening and watch it fail and went, okay, we're gonna decline, we're gonna keep declining, but there's nothing we can do about it, so we're just gonna get what we can from it. Nihilistic. Here's the thing though. The millennials, being stuck with this destroyed system that is no longer functioning, are looking around going, well, we don't like any of this chaos that you boomers created for us. We want stability. And order. And the Homelander generation, or what you guys call Gen Z, they are even more into this than the millennials are. Okay. The Homeland generation is going to vote for stability every single time. Okay. That's one of the things you're going to see throughout the next voting cycle. Whoever offers stability, that does not mean economic prosperity. You can have a stable, low functioning economy. It's actually pretty common throughout history.
Can I be progressive enough to finally reach stability?
No. Progressive requires destruction and creation, which is volatility. It's not progressive. Progressivism is in its very nature chaos. And that's not always a bad thing. Remember last week I used the example of markets go through breakouts and consolidations? You need both.
Yeah, but it's so old-fashioned to just say there's two sexes, men and women. We're going to say genders. There can be numerous genders, and we can invent new ones. And yeah, this is going to be wonderful. We'll create a whole new world, a whole new moral structure, a whole new definition of the family, a whole new way of living.
Mm-hmm. Did it work?
As somebody once said, ain't nobody got time for that.
Well, it didn't work because, and for a whole lot of reasons, a few of which we'll get into next week, although I'm sure we could pull more content out of it, it didn't work. And so now we have a system that was expressly and intentionally destroyed that has not been rebuilt in any fashion. Partly because the boomer generation is not interested in building things. They are the destroyers. And if in the generational cycle model, that would be their role, and the millennials would be the great rebuilders. That if you go with that model, and I'm not saying you have to, but the point is that the decisions of the boomers created the necessary conditions where now the millennials are looking at what the boomers did and going, yeah, I want none of that. And those were decisions that were made 60 years ago. These were choices that were made 60 years ago. Your
But
choice
you know
is
what?
go ahead.
This means that all the progress that the progressives have made, it's all going to be undone because when people get frustrated, they're going to go back to the truth. Gee, that's kind of some of that traditional stuff. It's been true for thousands of years. And so they're going to rediscover that, yeah, we probably need women to have children in their early 20s. Yeah, it's actually best if man and woman stay together. And sometimes you have to provide some, for lack of a better word, force. We can't make it easy for them. And so as they go back, they're going to discover some of these uncomfortable truths that our great grandparents knew.
Well, and
right?
on that point, yes, on that point though, and I want to make this very clear. We never go back to the way things were, and I think we actually said this, and we've said this before on a number of other streams. The future is a composite of the past and the present, and I absolutely do believe that we need to go back to some basics here. But the idea that all of the progressivism is going to get unrolled, I don't see that happening. And we need to be focusing on figuring out how to get the actual problems solved. And that in some cases, that does mean we are going to go back and undo some of those progressive programs. And those are going to be the programs that, particularly things like SSA, that we could never actually afford to do indefinitely anyway, economically or societally. Again, we have different streams on the economics and the society implications of that, the Baskerville solution and the one we did on the birth rates recently. Are kind of two sides of that.
We also need to to differentiate between progressivism and innovation.
Yes. There's been, I mean, does anyone honestly think we're going to get rid of computers and cell phones and social media sites?
No.
Yeah.
And certain biases, prejudices, and beliefs of the past did need to be reformed. And so, yeah, we shouldn't we're not advocating going back to things like that. So, yeah, you have a good point. It's not actually turning back the clock as much as it's recovering some past truths and integrating them into the future.
Integration. That's the word I'm looking for.
And some of the progressive things that they're foisting on us will not be integrated. They're going to have to pass away too. So it's it's an amalgamation of the past and the present will be the past pretty soon in due time. And so it'll evolve and it'll be an integration.
Well, and this the election's been big news, and I've been watching Twitter, and Twitter's just a party right now. Everyone's super happy. I'm going to make next week, I'm going to give away the keys to the kingdom. I'm going to tell you exactly who and how is going and who is going to control the next 40 years of politics and how they're going to do it. Now, that's a whole nother conversation that we do not have time for tonight. That's why this has been split up into 3 streams. But what I do want to say is understand going into next Monday is when I'll be doing that, the difference between stability and prosperity, because the millennials want stability. They were born into chaos. They were raised in increasing chaos. They are uninterested in volatility of any sort, and they will vote for stability. And this is particularly for tonight, a message to the right is understand that you can absolutely lose the young generations to the communist fairness doctrine, because fairness sounds like stability.
That's always been its lure.
Yes. And that lure is still there. This is why we said last week, this election is I think this is a good thing. I think there will be a lot of good things that come of this, but it's only a step in the right direction. It is only it is not the end. It is the beginning.
Well, the best comment I've heard on this is, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Be vigilant.
Yes, please.
We'll see how this turns out. Because, Donald Trump is not your savior. And in politics, there's always backroom deals. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. We're going to swing the election this way. Then you're going to come in and you're going to do this, that. We don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
It could be a furthering of the same agenda in a different manner. So, be cautious, remain vigilant.
Well, and as we discussed on Wednesday, don't necessarily assume that he even knows what needs to be fixed, and that if he did know, he would be willing to do it. I mean, how many people have read Baskerville's book? Not that many. Musk is the best chance you have of somebody understanding what's really going on with the birth rate. But we looked through the data last week, there is no mandate to erase the SSA in Trump's voting profiles. None. So, we're just kind of looking at the data and applying our heuristics and yes, our morality to this is how it's done. You take data, you take the heuristics and you apply it and you look at the future and you say, well, what's the most probable outcome of the two? That's what we were doing last week on last Wednesday on Steve's stream.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of different people who voted on the election and why they voted certain ways. You can go back and look at it because we broke down a lot of the demographics. You're going to hear them, other people talking about bits and pieces of them. But we did a pretty good job going through it, and we talked about it for about 2 hours. Men versus women, old versus young, blacks versus whites versus Hispanics. Not that we're all opposed to each other. It's just the difference in how things have shifted in voting patterns. There's a lot of good information in that stream.
Yeah. Well, that is kind of the end of what I wanted to talk about today. I really wanted to hammer on this concept of choice and the morality of choice, the heuristics of choice, the physical inevitability of choice. And I think that's something that a lot of rationalists forget to include in their thought processes. If you forget to include the inevitability of choice, amoralism actually sounds like it can work. But
just a fancy way of evading responsibility for one's choices.
Right. And that's really what amoralism comes down to. It's, as I said earlier, they're trying to say that because the observations and perspectives are immoral, therefore their choice has no moral consequence. That's probably a bit of that's actually probably smuggling a moral framework.
Oh, damn, I'm just going to have to say this.
Uh-oh.
When you say this, isn't it kind of avoiding accountability?
Uh-oh. Is that something that female thinkers do?
Something the red pill talks about, accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're owning the consequences of your actions.
Yes.
And, how do they avoid that? Solipsism? Rationalization.
The hamster.
Oh, yes. What's rationalization? what I'm doing it's not really immoral. It's it could be amoral, but it's not really immoral. Because here's the reason. It's kind of trying to make your decision a moral decision. And you're not responsible, so you're not accountable. So there are no consequences.
Yep.
That's an unfortunate point to make, but it's important because all the behaviors and complaints we have about men, all the complaints men have about women, men are not immune from that either. Those similar complaints or similar observations.
Men are still humans. Men aren't
Exactly.
perfectly logical. We're not robots over here either, you know.
But I must say, my rationalizations are much more sophisticated than women's rationalizations.
There might even be a kernel of truth to that, but there's still rationalizations. They are still an attempt to avoid accountability, even in men. Just because men make a rationalization doesn't make it all okay. So, yeah, that's a little bit about where we're headed next week. As I said, I'm going to give the keys to the kingdom for who controls the political future of the country, and I'm going to give them to everybody. I am not going to say that one party or the other has a lock on this. Because the future is the millennials and Gen Z. And what did I say they're voting for? Stability. Right now, so think about the election. What was the election about? Kamala would have been a continuation of Biden's policies. The millennials and Gen Z saw that Biden's policies were increasing chaos. It was plain as day. You got 2 new wars and all of that. Okay. So they voted against that. That's what they voted against. Okay.
And hey, it's been a yo-yo.
It has. And it can continue.
Obama, Democrat. Trump, Republican. Biden, Democrat.
Yep.
Trump, Republican. And we're bouncing. It's like a yo-yo. So who's to say in 4 years, swing back the other way? And as long as it keeps going this way, your mind keeps spinning and you keep following the tennis ball as it goes over the net.
Yep.
What aren't you paying attention? You're being distracted, probably.
Hey, did we do a video
other
on
things
distraction?
are going on?
Yeah, we did.
So, I mean, like half our back catalog has come up, I think, in tonight's video. But as Steve said at the beginning, we are headed somewhere with this. We have been headed somewhere with our videos over the past 7 months now. Goodness, guys, we've been at this a while. And we're going to keep going. And just because, I'm going to do the big thing about, the future. And there is a reason we actually very specifically scheduled this set of streams after the election. And the reason for that is because none of what we're talking about has anything to do with the election this year. It's all about the future. And so we didn't want people to be thinking that somehow we were talking about, November 5th. So, yeah, I'm looking forward
to all our
this.
viewers. Consider yourself very lucky. We have like a little over 60 subscribers.
Yeah.
So you're going to be one of the very few people in the world to know what the keys are.
And so I want to give a little, we're at the very end. I'm sure there's not a lot of people watching right now, but Shu, if you're watching this,
Who knows?
You actually 2 or 3 weeks ago on a video correctly identified where we're headed with this and who specifically we're targeting. And so I'm actually going to say it now just for you, Shu. we are going to spend next week going after Nietzsche. And there's a reason for that. And I know that I just said, oh, but I'm going to describe I'm going to give the keys to the kingdom on who controls the political parties for the next 40 years. There's a reason for that and Nietzsche occurring in the same episode. We're going to get into it. It's going to be a long one. It's going to be boring. Bring your favorite beverage and well, fun for Nick, but we get called dry a lot. So bring your favorite beverage for this one. I've actually been working with some trained philosophers and Nick and Steve and my dad and this has been going. I've been doing a lot of work. This has actually been working on this for about 2 months now, to try and make sure that we have as solid an argument as possible. But yes, next week we are going after Nietzsche and his various representations in the system that we have today. So I'm looking forward to that. I have even more notes than I had for this episode lined up. I'm sure Nick has things to say because we've been texting back and forth about Nietzsche, and poor Steve's had to listen to us go back and forth in the shared thread. So Nick's going to show up big for that one. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm having fun, and that's just a little nugget for Shu, who actually did weeks in advance figure out where we were going with this, and I didn't want to say anything until we got a lot closer to it. But congrats, Shu. That's everything I had for today. Steve, no, Nick, you're on Wednesday.
Nick, yep. Leadership. What is leadership, and what should you look for in a leader?
Could it be
what makes a good leader?
Could this affect how one
Something
might
like that.
choose a leader?
Yeah.
Oh.
And also character development.
Yeah. So you can also take some of the stuff we talked about tonight and just bring it forward with you to Nick's episode on Wednesday, and yeah, we'll have some fun with that. And then Steve, I think you have next Wednesday.
I guess I haven't figured out what we're talking about. Maybe we need a light one.
Well, okay. We did decide before this stream that we are going to do a light one on the Monday before Thanksgiving. Nick will not be with us on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so we just kind of decided that we're not going to do anything. But Nick had a crazy idea to go after the flat earthers, so we're going to go after the flat earthers on the 25th. This will be a lot of fun. There'll be a lot of video. I'm a huge fan of SpaceX, so I've got hours of video at my disposal to throw at the flat Earth guys. So that that's what we'll be doing then. Geez, we've got the rest of November planned out, so I don't know that we need to say anything more on that. Guys, to our listeners out there, if you disagree with what we're talking about in the philosophy, please leave a comment, ask us questions. Sometimes your clarifying questions that you ask turn into entire episodes. That has happened to us more than once already. If you think that somebody needs to see this, particularly on the concept of choice and the importance of choice, as it applies to everything in your life, that could be red pill, that could be how you choose a leader, that could be anything, please share the video. I think that we did a pretty good job tonight of breaking down the importance of choice and moral frameworks even. I know, horrible words to say. But this, so please share this video. And if you want to hear more,
let's stir another hornet's nest.
Yes, let's. I mean, how many have we done recently? But if you like what you heard, you want to hear more, please give us a subscribe. We don't have many, but the ones who do seem to show up quite a bit. And so we do value you guys, and we like interacting with you guys. So yeah, that's all I have for tonight. Do you guys have any final words you want to say?
I'm out of words now.
We used up all of Steve's words.
Yep.
Any final words, Nick? Are you good?
I'm good.
All right. Well, we will see you on Wednesday for a talk on leadership. And I think Nick's got something cool for us because he's kind of a good source for that. So we'll see you on Wednesday. Bye.
Later.